My name's Charlie.
And my name's DeAndre. And together we're Bars and Melody. Bam!
Two boys met on Facebook. 5 months later, Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer and the world stopped. 255 million people have watched that moment on YouTube. It is the second most viewed video in Britain's Got Talent history, and it belongs to two teenagers from different parts of England who had never met in person before January 2014. 11 years of music followed, 5 albums, global tours, a fan base that stretched from Wales to Warsaw, and then on March 14th, 2025, it was over. One final concert, one deliberate goodbye, and two young men walking off a stage in Poland into completely separate futures. So what really happened? And where are they both now? The last night in Warsaw. They chose Warsaw for their final concert, not London, Manchester, nor the cities where British pop acts usually take their curtain calls. It has to be Warsaw, Poland, right in that voodoo club on March 14th, 2025. And the reason why tells you everything about what Bars and Melody actually built across 11 years of music. Most acts that emerge from talent shows build their audience at home first and reach international fans as an afterthought. BAM did the opposite. Their biggest, most devoted, most emotionally invested fan base was in Europe, Poland especially, a country where their music connected in a way that went deeper than chart positions or radio play, a community that had grown up with them the way the Bambinos everywhere had, just more intensely. So when the time came to choose where to stand for the last time, the answer was obvious to them, even if it surprised people watching from the outside. The date was not random either, March 14th. 14.03 in the way dates read across continental Europe, and 143 was the title of their debut album. Released August 21st, 2015. The album that debuted at number 4 on the official UK charts announced to anyone paying attention that these were not a one-hit talent show act. They were building something real. Choosing that date for the final show was the kind of deliberate symbolic gesture that only makes sense if you understand the relationship between BAM and their fans. The Bambinos. That is what the fan base called themselves, and they had been with Leandre and Charlie from the beginning. Some of them had been there since before the BGT audition, since the early YouTube videos, since the Facebook posts that predated any of the fame. For those people, a final concert on March 14th at Voodoo Club in Warsaw was not just a goodbye. It was a recognition, a thank you expressed in the language of dates and album titles rather than speeches. The kind of acknowledgement that only the people who had really been paying attention would fully understand. That is the kind of relationship Bars and Melody built, and it is the kind that makes an ending genuinely difficult for everyone involved. The farewell announcement had come 8 months earlier, July 2024, in a YouTube video. Two young men who had spent 11 years building their careers in front of cameras sitting down to explain that they were parting ways as a duo. The video was emotional. It was honest. And it was notably short on explanation. They said thank you. They said what an incredible 10 years it had been. They said the fans had made their dreams a reality. They said they could not have asked for a better family to share the journey with. What they did not say was why. Not precisely. Not in the specific way that the Bambino community immediately began asking for in the comment sections, the fan forums, and the social media threads that lit up within hours of the announcement landing. The absence of a specific reason generated its own kind of noise. Theories circulated, people speculated about creative differences, about personal tensions, about the natural divergence that happens when two people who met as teenagers grow into two adults with different ideas about what their lives should look like. None of those theories were confirmed or denied publicly. Leandre released a separate video with some final thoughts. Charlie went quiet for a period, and the farewell tour was announced as the framework for properly processing the ending. Across the following months, the Bambinos showed up everywhere the tour went. Not with the grief of people losing something they had not seen coming, with the specific kind of devotion that comes from having had time to prepare. A farewell tour is a gift. It says we are not just leaving, we are leaving properly. We are giving you the chance to say goodbye while there is still something left to say goodbye to. And then came Warsaw. The audition video that started everything had been viewed 255 million times on YouTube as of June 2025. It is the second most watched video in the entire history of the Britain's Got Talent channel. 255 million people pressing play on a February 2014 audition by two teenagers from different corners of England who had found each other on Facebook 5 months earlier. That is not a talent show moment. That is a cultural moment. The kind that belongs to the people who watched it as much as to the people who performed it. The last night in Warsaw was the closing of a circle that started in a Manchester audition room in 2014. A circle drawn across 11 years of albums and tours, and a fan base that grew up with them across multiple countries and multiple languages. Two boys walked off a stage in Poland and into separate futures. Two boys who had met on Facebook built something that 255 million people watched. The question is what they each became on the way to that final night, and what comes next for both of them now that the stage is dark and the future belongs only to themselves. Before the golden buzzer, who they actually were. Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer on February 8th, 2014. But the story of who Leandre de Vries and Charlie Lenehan were before that moment is what made everything that followed feel real. Because the thing about that audition that 255 million people have since watched is this. It was not performance, it was testimony. And testimony only lands the way that one did when the person delivering it means every single word. He was born on October 6, 2000 in Port Talbot, Wales, a small industrial town on the South Wales coast that has produced more than its share of people with something to prove to the world. His father, Antonio, worked as a stonemason. His mother, Victoria, was a personal trainer. He was the second youngest of 5 siblings. 3 older brothers, Ben Lee, Jacob Lee, and Joey, and a younger sister, Matilda. Music moved through the family. Joey would later compete in the 11th series of The X Factor as part of a boy band called Overload Generation. The household understood what ambition in the creative world looked like. But Leandre's childhood was not simple. For 4 years at Glanafon Comprehensive School, he was bullied. Not the vague, difficult-to-define social friction that the word sometimes describes. Persistent, targeted bullying that he has spoken about publicly and specifically. The kind that makes a child want to disappear. The kind that shapes how you understand your own worth in the world. That experience became the foundation of Hopeful, the song that would, change everything. He was not performing someone else's pain when he stood on that Manchester stage. He was reporting his own. And the audience heard the difference. Before the BGT audition, he had been performing solo under the name Little Dre, developing his rap style from the age of 10, finding the voice that would later carry one half of the most viral talent show audition in British television history. Charlie Joe Lenehan Green was born on October 27, 1998, in Frampton Cotterell, Gloucestershire, England's other side. His mother, Karen, worked as a cook in school kitchens in Thornbury. His stepfather was a businessman. He had a younger sister named Brooke. He would later discover, much further into his adult life, that he had a younger biological brother he had not known about, meeting him when Charlie was 29 and the brother was 16. Life reveals itself slowly. Charlie found his voice at 11 when schoolmates invited him to join a band. That is how simply these things sometimes begin. He attended Winterbourne International Academy, where he was drawn toward drama, music, and engineering simultaneously. He started posting videos online. That is the detail that matters for this story. Videos that a 13-year-old boy in Port Talbot found in September 2013 while scrolling through social media looking for something that felt like his world. Leandre saw Charlie's videos. He reached out. They connected online in September 2013. They met in person for the first time in January 2014. And within 5 months of that first Facebook message, they were standing on Britain's Got Talent stage in Manchester performing a song about survival. 5 months from first contact came the golden buzzer. The song they performed was built on Twista and Faith Evans' Hope, but the verses were entirely their own. Leandre's rap described 4 years of being bullied in language that was specific and personal and completely unguarded. Charlie's vocals carried the emotional weight of the message into the room in a way that pure rap could not have done alone. That combination, the precision of rap and the vulnerability of melody. Applied to a subject that millions of people in that audience and watching at home had either lived through personally or watched someone they loved live through. That is why 255 million people eventually pressed play. The Alicia Dixon reaction, the Simon Cowell reaction, the audience reaction, These were not responses to a polished performance. They were responses to something true arriving in a room that was prepared for entertainment, and they received something more. After the audition, before the semifinals, the History Channel flew them to America. They appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. Two teenagers from Wales and Gloucestershire sitting on a famous American talk show sofa talking about bullying to a global daytime audience. The scale of what was happening around them was moving faster than either of them could have fully processed. They returned for the semifinal and performed I'll Be Missing You with their own verses about losing someone. Candles were distributed to the audience. They finished third in the final, behind Calabro and Lucy Kay. Third place. Simon Cowell signed them to Syco for £500,000. Two boys who met on Facebook had finally arrived. What came after that was supposed to be the dream, and for a long time, it genuinely was. 11 years of music, the career between the buzzer and Warsaw. Most Britain's Got Talent acts get a moment, a viral video, a wave of attention that breaks loudly and recedes just as fast, the winner's single, a tour, and then the quiet slide back toward the life they had before the cameras found them. Bars and melody got 11 years. That is not just luck, but work. The first single after BGT was Hopeful. Released July 7th, 2014, the same song that had stopped Simon Cowell's hand over the golden buzzer. The music video dropped the same day. They appeared on Good Morning Britain this morning. The official chart on BBC Radio 1. They did an HMV signing tour. The song peaked at number 5 in the UK charts. For a duo that had not existed 12 months earlier, that was a significant opening statement. The follow-up singles kept coming through 2015. Shining Star, Keep Smiling, peaking at 52. Stay Strong, peaking at 53. None of them matched the commercial ceiling of Hopeful. But that was never really the point. They were building an identity, establishing a relationship with an audience that was not built on chart positions, but on something harder to manufacture. Trust. The specific trust of a young fan base that believed the people making the music meant what they were saying. Then came album 143 in August 2015, debuting at number 4 on the official UK charts. The title itself was a message. 143 is a numerological shorthand for I love you. The number of letters in each word. The kind of detail that a fan base notices and holds on to. The kind of communication that creates the specific intimacy between a musician and their audience that no amount of marketing budget can replicate. They did not stop. Teen Spirit EP in 2016, Generation Z in 2017, the sound evolving, the anti-bullying pop of the BGT era, making room for something more complex as two boys who had been teenagers when the whole thing started grew into young men with more to say and more varied ways of saying it. Then came the complications. In March 2016, Leandre's father Antonio threatened legal action against the group's management. He claimed he had written Hopeful. He claimed the management was overworking the boys and moving them away from the anti-bullying message on which he believed they were built on. He went so far as to temporarily take over the duo's social media accounts, posting content from his own projects until the management team regained control. The boys' management stated that Leandre and Charlie had written Hopeful themselves. A spokesperson said they were happy with their career and did not feel exploited. The situation resolved publicly, but it left a shadow over what should have been a straightforwardly celebrated period. They kept working regardless. The Sad Boy album arrived in 2020. A genuine departure, the production aesthetic darker, more contemporary, less aligned with the acoustic pop rap fusion that had defined their earlier output. The title alone signaled a shift in emotional register. These were no longer the teenagers who had stood on a stage with candles waving in the audience. They were young adults processing the full weight of what their lives had contained. The Carpe Diem EP in 2021 completed that transition, a new direction confirmed. A signal that the version of BAM that had existed in 2014 was genuinely gone, and something more complex had replaced it. They appeared on BGT Champions in 2019, won the Superfan vote in the preliminaries, made the final. Performed original songs. Simon Cowell, the man who had pressed the golden buzzer 5 years earlier, praised them for performing what they believed in. They appeared on AGT Champions, were eliminated in the preliminaries, kept going regardless. Collaborations with Teeny Tempa, French Montana, HRVY. The network of people in their professional world expanding as their creative ambitions expanded with it. Platinum albums in Poland, performances in Japan, a genuinely global footprint built from a talent show stage in Manchester. And throughout all of it, the Bambinos, the fan base that had been there from the beginning and that had grown up at exactly the same rate as Leandra and Charlie. Teenagers in 2014 who were young adults by 2025. A fan base that had aged into the music rather than out of it. That is rare. That is what 11 years of consistent, evolving, genuinely personal output produces. But by 2024, something had shifted. Something that the music itself had been quietly signaling for years. The duo that had started on a Facebook message in 2013 had reached the natural end of what it could be, and what happened next would stun the Bambinos who had never fully believed it could end. The split. What really happened. They announced the end in July 2024 in a YouTube video. What they said was, "Thank you." What they did not say is everything the fan community spent the following months trying to work out. The video was warm. It was genuine. It was notably short on specifics. 10 incredible years. Dreams made reality, the best family anyone could have asked for. And then a phrase that carried more weight than the surrounding warmth suggested. They would be parting ways as a duo. Parting ways, not the end of a friendship, not a dramatic falling out, not a statement about anyone being wrong or anyone being hurt. Just two people who had been walking the same road since they were teenagers and had arrived at a point where the road split. The comment sections erupted immediately. Thousands of Bambinos processing in real time. The shock was genuine and widespread. For an audience that had followed every album, every tour, every evolution of the Bam sound across 11 years, this was not an abstract piece of celebrity news. It was personal. These were people who had grown up listening to music about surviving hard things, and now they were being asked to survive the end of the thing that had helped them through. But here's the question the fan community kept asking. Why now? Why after all this? Why after the Bambinos had stayed through the sound changes and the label changes and the lean years between the BGT era and the Sad Boy era? The honest answer requires looking at what was happening in both of their lives in the years leading up to that July announcement. For Leandra, 2023 had been devastating. In December 2023, he revealed on Instagram that his brother Jacob had passed away earlier that month. Jacob Lee, one of his 3 older brothers, gone. Leandra shared the news publicly with the specific restraint of someone who is still in the early stages of grief and does not yet have the language to fully describe what they are carrying. That kind of loss changes everything. It changes your relationship with time, with what matters, with what you are willing to spend your energy on, with what version of your professional life still feels worth pursuing. He was 23 years old and grieving a sibling while simultaneously trying to navigate the final year of a professional partnership that had been his entire identity since he was 13. The weight of that combination is not something that any amount of hard work and touring schedule can simply absorb. For Charlie, the shift had begun 2 years earlier. In June 2022, his daughter Delilah was born. Charlie announced the pregnancy in January of that year. He had said he had always wanted to be a father, and the arrival of a child does not just add something to your life, it reorganizes your entire hierarchy of priorities in ways that are impossible to fully anticipate until you are living inside them. Charlie was 23 when Delilah arrived. He was 25 when the split was announced. 2 years of being a father. 2 years of understanding what his daily life needed to look like in order to be the person Delilah deserved to grow up with. 2 years of accumulating evidence that the structure of Bam as it had existed was not compatible with the version of his life he needed to be building. He had also been open about struggles with anxiety and mental health throughout the duo's run. His songwriting had processed those struggles consistently across the later albums. When a person has spent years using their creative work to navigate their own psychological reality, there comes a point where continuing to make that work within a specific format may start to feel more constraining than liberating. Neither of these circumstances required anyone to be wrong. Nobody was the villain. Nobody ended something that was working. What ended was something that had reached the natural limit of what it could be for two people who needed different things from their lives and their music. The farewell tour became the gift. 8 months of concerts, country by country, letting the Bambinos say goodbye properly, letting Leandra and Charlie finish on their own terms with the dignity of a proper ending rather than the messiness of a collapse. The split was announced without drama. It ended without drama. But two separate people walked away from that stage in Warsaw with completely different lives ahead of them, lives that were already taking shape before the last note played, lives that were built on the foundation of 11 years of something real. And what those two lives look like in 2026 is where this story finally arrives. Leandra de Vries, where Bars is now. Leandra de Vries was 13 years old when Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer. He is 25 years old in 2026. Everything he knows about being a performer, about writing music that connects, about standing on a stage in front of thousands of people and making them feel something real, he learned while the world was watching. There was no quiet apprenticeship, no years of playing small rooms and building slowly toward a larger platform. He went from a Welsh comprehensive school where he was being bullied to a Manchester audition room and then to a global fan base in the space of a few months. That trajectory does not come without a cost. The version of yourself that becomes famous at 13 is not the version you eventually grow into. The gap between those two people is where the real story of Leandra de Vries lives. He spent 11 years inside that gap, making music that tried to close it, evolving from the anti-bullying pop of Hopeful toward the darker, more complex emotional territory of Sad Boy and Carpe Diem. Each album a measure of how far he had traveled from the boy who stood on that stage to the young man trying to figure out who he was on the other side of it. And then 2023 delivered the hardest blow. His brother Jacob passed away in December of that year. Leandra announced it on Instagram in the specific way that someone posts the worst news when they do not yet have the words to contain it. Brief, raw. The kind of post that says something enormous in almost no words at all because anything more would be too much. Jacob Lee, one of 3 older brothers, gone before Leandra had turned 24. Grief at that age, in that life, carrying that specific loss while simultaneously navigating the final year of the only professional identity you have ever known. There is no clean way through that. You go through it the way people go through the things that break them open. One day at a time, with whatever you can find to hold on to. What Leandra has said publicly about his solo plans following the split has been measured and careful. He has expressed a desire to continue creating music independently. He has reflected on the decade-long journey with genuine gratitude. He has not rushed to announce a project, generate headlines about a comeback, or aggressively position himself in the market. That restraint is interesting. And it is consistent with someone who has spent the past year or so sitting with loss, grief, and the end of something enormous, choosing not to fill that silence with noise. His relationship history has been kept largely private. He was in a relationship with German Instagram personality Carla Brocker for several years before they broke up in 2023, the same year Jacob died. He has not confirmed any new relationship publicly since. His personal life as of 2026 is quiet in the specific way of someone choosing to protect what they have left after a period of significant loss. He remains connected to the Bambino fan base through social media. That connection is genuine. The fans who followed him from 13 to 25 watched him grow in real time. They understand his evolution in a way that is different from the relationship most artists have with their audience. These are not fans of a persona. They are people who watched a real person become who he is across a decade of public life. His net worth is estimated at approximately $1 million, built through music sales, streaming, touring, television appearances, and the brand partnerships that accumulate when you have been a public figure for over a decade. The next chapter for Leandra de Vries as a solo artist is still being written. He has hinted at what it might contain, but has not yet fully committed it to the public record. And given everything he has been carrying across the past 2 years, that pacing seems right. The boy who wrote about surviving bullying grew up to face something harder than any schoolyard cruelty, the loss of a brother. the end of the only professional partnership he ever had. The task of figuring out who he is when the duo that defined him no longer exists. Those are not small things to carry. They are the material of a career-defining second chapter, if he can find the words for them. And if the 13-year-old who stood in Manchester with 4 years of bullying behind him and turned all of that pain into something 255 million people wanted to watch is any indication of what Leander de Vries does with difficult material, he will find the words. Charlie Lenihan, Where Melody Is Now. Charlie Lenihan is 27 years old in 2026. He has a daughter named Delilah, who turned 3 in June. He has a solo music career which he is building from scratch. And he has the specific challenge that every person who has spent their entire professional life as one half of something now faces, figuring out what the other half looks like when it stands alone. That is not a small task. And Charlie Lenihan is not approaching it as though it is one. He was 15 years old when Britain's Got Talent made him famous. 15. He went back to school the day after the finale, not as a statement or as an act of deliberate normalcy, simply because he was a teenager, and that was what teenagers did. The fame sat alongside the homework, the school corridors, and the ongoing reality of being 15 years old in Gloucestershire. 12 years later, he is approaching 30 with a daughter, a solo career in its early stages, and a life that looks considerably more complex and considerably more interesting than the boy who posted singing videos online in 2013 could have imagined. Charlie announced in January 2022 that he was going to be a father. He said he had always wanted to be a dad. Delilah arrived on June 29th, 2022. The photographs he shared were careful and warm. A young man who had grown up very publicly holding something very private and very precious. Fatherhood at 23 in the middle of a music career with a fan base watching everything you do is its own kind of navigation. But Charlie has spoken about it with the same openness he has always brought to his more personal creative work. His music in the later BAM years had processed anxiety and vulnerability with increasing directness. Fatherhood gave that emotional honesty a new focus. His daughter is not a content piece. She is the reason many other things fell into sharper perspective. There is also a personal story that emerged around this time, suggesting that life keeps surprising even people who think they know their own history. Charlie discovered at 29 years old that he had a younger biological brother. The brother was 16 when they met, a half-sibling he had grown up without knowing existed. The kind of revelation that quietly rewrites your understanding of your own story in ways you are still processing long after the initial discovery. His solo musical direction has started to take shape. He released a debut solo single called Waistline. The description that has accompanied coverage of the track is a sleek R&B groover, a significant departure from the acoustic pop-rap fusion that defined 11 years of BAM output. The choice signals something deliberate. He is not trying to continue a softened version of bars and melody with different branding. He is making a genuine left turn into a sound that belongs specifically to him rather than to the duo. That takes courage. The Bambinos who followed him across 11 years have expectations. They have a specific idea of what Charlie Lenihan sounds like. Waistline tells them that idea needs updating. Some artists in his position would have played it safer, made something that satisfied existing fans rather than challenging them. Charlie did not play it safe. He has been open about his mental health throughout his career in ways that were genuinely unusual for a young male pop artist when he started. Anxiety, emotional vulnerability. The gap between the confident performer on stage and the person dealing with real psychological weight off it. He discussed these things in his music and in interviews with a directness that built a specific kind of trust with his audience. That trust does not evaporate because the duo has ended. It transfers. It is the foundation on which a solo career can be built if the music continues to mean something real. His social media presence is active and engaged. 383,000 Instagram followers as of early 2026. His posts reflect a person living a real life. The solo music work, the occasional glimpse of domestic life. Photography, which he has described as a creative interest alongside the music. a full picture of a 27-year-old building something new in real time. His net worth sits at approximately $2 million, the accumulated result of 11 years of professional output across multiple revenue streams. Two boys who met on Facebook, 11 years, 5 albums, 255 million views, and a final night in Warsaw. They are both still making music, just not together. Bars and Melody were never supposed to last 11 years. Two boys who met on Facebook in 2013 were supposed to be a talent show moment, a golden buzzer, a viral video, a single. And then the quiet fade that claims almost everyone who steps onto that stage. They refused to fade. They built something real instead. Real music, real fans. A real friendship that survived label changes and legal threats and personal loss and a decade of growing up in public. The final note played in Warsaw on March 14th, 2025, but both of them are still here, still creating, still carrying everything those 11 years built into whatever comes next. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. Which BAM song stayed with you the most?